Fred Defleur/AFP/Getty Images. At the end of August, Myanmar's military unleashed operations in response to what it described as terrorist attacks on at least 20 police stations in its western state of Rakhine. What followed has yet to be documented in full, but Bangladesh has accused Myanmar's military of burning 10,000 homes, and according to satellite imagery from Human Rights Watch, hundreds of villages in Rakhine State have been obliterated. More than 420,000 minority Rohingya Muslims have fled across the border to Bangladesh, where hundreds of thousands are already official or unofficial refugees from a similar exodus more than 20 years ago. State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, a former democracy activist, and now the leader of the governing party, misrepresented and minimized military actions in the region this week. She further suggested that the government does not understand why hundreds of thousands of people would flee to another country. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has warned that based on the information available so far, the crisis appears to be a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. In this excerpt from my book One Long Night, A Global History of Concentration Camps, I trace my 2015 trip to Rakhine State, diving into the messy history of the region, how it came to have detention camps that may have fueled insurgency, and the rationale those in the state capital used to justify keeping their former neighbors in camps. All these pieces are critical to understanding events happening today, events likely to get worse with the government's announcement this week that it intends to build 7 new Rohingya-only camps in the vicinity of the razed villages. A flight through Korea or Thailand to Yangon in Myanmar and a short hop on a smaller plane can carry anyone to the Bay of Bengal and Sittwe, the capital of Rakhine State. Trees heavy with giant fruit bats, and what appear to be 10 rickshaw drivers and 1 mini-truck cabbie per capita compete for any foreigner's attention. The town boasted nearly 200,000 residents a decade ago, but many of those inhabitants no longer live in Sittwe, having been relegated to detention camps on the outskirts of town. In the summer of 2012, reports of a gang rape and other violent crimes stirred tensions between Buddhist and Rohingya Muslim communities across Rakhine State. In response to the escalating violence, extremists led riots that October that burned thousands of Rohingya out of their homes. Vandalized mosques were boarded up, one was converted to a police station. Under the state of emergency declared by the federal government, the Rohingya population throughout the region was loaded onto buses and trucks, and dropped off on the outskirts of their hometowns, near Rohingya-only enclaves, or in the middle of nowhere, eventually ending up stuck in the kinds of camps for internally displaced persons IDPs typically seen during wars and natural disasters. In some cases armed guards stopped extremists from additional pogroms, but they also kept the Rohingya detainees from leaving. The only Rohingya permitted to stay in the city of Sittwe have been sealed off in Ongminglar, the Muslim quarter, which has become an extension of the camp system that has risen around the state. Roads leading into the district are blocked at checkpoints by red and white sawhorses wrapped in barbed wire, creating a ghetto in the middle of a city filled with Buddhists, Christians, and a panoply of other ethnic groups the Rohingya lived among and did business with not long ago. Most residents of the state endured rural poverty even before the advent of the camps, but in the relative prosperity of Sittwe, many Rohingya had assimilated into urban life, working in construction or making eyeglasses and plate glass windows. Some had attended the city university. Since the 2012 violence, segregation has been enforced. But the borders of the camps are somewhat permeable. A few Rohingya work as day laborers for the military. As with many prior camp systems in other countries, non-governmental groups enter to coordinate aid to the displaced populations, and journalists sometimes get government permission to visit the camps, or failing that, are able to bribe their way in, if they do not mind putting their fate in the hands of strangers. Camp structures vary widely up and down the narrow blade of the coastal state, as do camp communities, but around Sittwe, hustlers work both sides. Outside drivers cart visitors or goods into the camps, selling the latter at exorbitant rates. Some detainees save their food rations to sell to those outside the camps, though they always take a loss, dependent on the mercy of their buyers. With a little cash, Rohingya entrepreneurs can import comfort foods from town, which they offer to fellow detainees for a profit. In some places longhouse frontage has been converted to small kiosks, with neatly hung rows of packaged goods,